Welcome!
Hello!
This is week 51 of Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. And we are starting to watch the episodes that aired in the 51st week of Santa Barbara back in 1985. We watched episode 246, which originally aired Monday, July 15th, 1985. And before we get to the recap, I remembered something I was going to mention, I think from Friday's episode, when Ted is arguing with Cece over whether or not to go to Harvard or USB. After Ted leaves, Cece says to Sophia, "You've always coddled Ted too much, and now you're seeing the results of it." Now, this is kind of funny, since she left when he was, 4 or 5, right? And has only been back for like 3 months now that he's in, his late teens. So somehow she did a lot of damage during those 5 years and 1 month compared to the 18 years that he had with him.
Yeah, I think Cece often does this. We've seen this little habit he has quite a bit of getting mad at everyone for, mistakes that were ones that he also made or that he actually was the one who made himself.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So this
classic
is just a
Cece
pattern. Yeah.
It's not just Mason or Ted or everyone else. Now, you'll remember last week we were kind of excited that we had seen 4 different actors who'd played Cece on various of the shows we watch in the evenings, such as Barnaby Jones and Police Story. And, we're just watching them in sequence as they come up. So it's kind of an interesting synchronicity that several different shows that aired in different time frames that we just happened to have caught a week where we had 4 Cece's. And literally after we finished the podcast, we started watching Barnaby Jones. And our 5th Cece, Charles Bateman, was in that episode. So we got 5 out of 7. And the other 2, I don't think we are going to get, because the one actor's name I always forget, who played CC number 6, I would say, he's only got 1 credit for Santa Barbara. So for all I know, it may have been a stand-in or something who doesn't normally get credited work. And of course, young Cece is the only other one we've seen. He was, about 8 or 9 when we saw him, so he wouldn't have been in a Barnaby Jones or anything else, but maybe he did something later that we'll encounter someday. And then also I'd been watching the Dean Martin roasts that aired on Decades a couple of weeks ago, all the later set of 24 or 26. And we had seen Barnaby Wallace's dad. What's his name? I think it's Glenn Wallace. I can't think of the actor now. Jack Carter, on one of them. And I was watching another roast, and Dina Dietrich was on it. And she, of course, we've seen her as Katie Wallace. So we've seen both Wallace parents in other things, but we've only seen one of them on the show so far. And now, on to the episode. Nick and Kelly decide to get married for real this time, because you remember they had kind of a fake wedding a few weeks ago in their old clothes that they found in a trunk. So they get out either the same old clothes or some better ones. I don't think there are multiple wedding dresses. So and they decide to have a real wedding in the saloon. So before the ceremony, Kelly says, "Once we do this, nothing will separate us." So I'm sure she's right. I'm sure they'll be together for the rest of the show.
I'm thoroughly expecting in the next episode, when they're on their honeymoon, that a couple of Jack Stanfield Lee's thugs will come thundering in or something like that. They'll be pulled asunder in some way.
Well, they're really married now, so that's good. Steve Bassett finds Cruz Castillo talking to Augusta when he comes to the Lockridge place to discuss the case. He's a little bit annoyed at that because they didn't coordinate anything. And then he finds out that Cruz is actually on Sophia's side. And he accuses Cruz of undermining the case and warns him that he's on the brink of throwing away his whole career. I think Steve really is planning to use this to bolster his own career, the fame and having a celebrity defendant and a wealthy local family that he can defeat to try and gain some status in his job and maybe in the city. So there's going to be some friction there.
Definitely, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out with Christie's story as well, because I know, as I've probably mentioned in previous podcasts, it just doesn't seem to me it would necessarily be a good look for this rising star in the district attorney's office to be revealed to have had an affair with his stepsister, who was probably a teenager at the time.
It seems like the only two people that like him are Mary and Theda.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone that meets him seems to be in conflict with him. Although we haven't actually seen him physically in a meeting with Augusta,
no,
or Lionel or Warren, any of the Lockridges that were there that night yet. Cruz then goes to visit Mason to ask how he can help Sophia when he has to testify. He's not going to actively say anything negative, but he does have to, state the facts, and he's worried that something might get twisted by Steve or something like that. And Mason just tells him to say the truth. Eden shows up and is annoyed to find Cruz at Mason's and says, "Oh, this is a big conflict of interest, you meeting with Mason." She, of course, still thinks that Cruz is on the side of having Sophia put away, even no matter what his protestations have been. And then she says, "Oh, and you're breaking your promise to me that you'd be looking for Kelly."
I was kind of glad she mentioned Kelly again, because it had sort of seemed to me in at least the first part of this episode that everyone had kind of moved on from that almost. They're all kind of cleaned and scrubbed up, and now they're, Cruz is worrying about Sophia, and of course we've already had the thing with the theft at the Capwell Hotel, so there seems to have been a lot of things happening since the urgent search for Kelly a while back.
I think the writers realized it too, because Ted seemed to have a line thrown in later in the episode of, "And we're also worried about Kelly being missing."
Yeah.
Because nothing else in the episode really indicated that. So then Cruz goes to tell Sophia that he will be, first of all, that he's still looking for Kelly, and that he wants to testify for the defense. Eden is, of course, eavesdropping behind a pillar, which Cruz notices anyway. And later Eden just says that he's only doing that to impress her. And then he says the time of impressing you is passing. So maybe he's hoping this will spur Eden into trying to get back with him. Santa Barbara teen scene, summertime fun time. Santa Barbara teen scene, summertime fun time. Santa Barbara teen scene, summertime fun time. Summertime. Christy finds Ted packing up some books from the study, and she says that when she left her house, she had to climb out the window. And then she has a flashback, and she's in her underwear on her bed, and suddenly Steve starts pounding on her door, and she quickly pulls on her clothes and actually climbs out the window. And I believe Madonna's "You Must Be an Angel" is playing in the background there. And then Steve breaks down the door and bursts in to find the room empty. So that's how Christy left home.
Yeah.
And a flashback, and she decides she needs to make herself beautiful for Ted. And then later we see her combing her hair in the mirror, and she's kind of making it all big. And then she says to herself, "You look like a recycled Lakin here." So she's going to try to win Ted over tonight. Meanwhile, Ted goes over to Lakin, and Lakin apologizes to Ted about having stormed off the other night, and tells him that she's proud that he stood up to his father about wanting to go to USB instead of Harvard. And then she says she'll cook him dinner tomorrow at his apartment. And Ted says, "What are you going to cook?" She says, "Something hot, maybe?" Ted replies, "Oh, maybe I should have Mason leave." And Lakin says, "No, maybe." And then later we see her looking in the mirror like someone who's planning to sleep with her boyfriend tomorrow.
Finally.
So, hey, our anniversary's coming up on Wednesday, so maybe that'll sync up.
Mm-hmm.
Steve tells Christy that he's found a place for her right next to his apartment. Ted sees Steve there on the front porch and tells him that Sophia hasn't made her decision yet and get out. So this is now twice that Ted's kicked Steve out of the Capwell house, as if that wasn't enough of a reason for Steve to hate him, the fact that he thinks that Christy is dating Ted. So I feel there's going to be a confrontation between Steve and Ted over things that Ted doesn't even realize are going on, because Ted really has rubbed him the wrong way several times without Ted really even realizing how angry Steve has been. So I think Ted better watch out.
Although I would say if Ted had better watch out down the road, Steve probably should watch out too, because he is messing with the Capwells if he is messing with Ted. And they might end up being curious as to why he is so belligerent around the Ted-Christy situation.
Back at Sally's apartment, Ted suggests to Mason that maybe they could plead temporary insanity, but Mason says they can't really do that because she had a definite, clear plan to frighten Lionel. Christy arrives while Ted's in the shower, and Mason takes the opportunity to try to get some more information about Steve out of her, but she says she really doesn't know much about Steve. She basically reiterates that, she hadn't seen him in years and they don't have any contact. So. Anyway, she wants to see Ted, and Mason says, I suppose you could come in and wait for him. You won't have to wait very long. Ted takes very quick showers, and very cold ones too, for some reason. So, I think, I don't know if he was hoping that Christy would act on that, or if he was just having fun. But Mason leaves, and Christy takes off her dress, and Ted comes out in a towel, and well, after a short discussion about, you probably should want me more than Lakin, Ted tells Christy to put her clothes back on. And Christy says, you've been going out with Lakin out of loyalty. She won't even make love to you. I can make you happier than anybody. Ted says, no one can make me happier than Lakin. And then Ted says that maybe they shouldn't see each other anymore, because obviously she's crossed this line, and it's going to be awkward and problematic. Christy then says, you're a liar. So that's an interesting thing. It's almost like, she thought he had made some agreement with her to be friends or whatever, perhaps more, but now, he's totally wanting to cut her off completely. So let's hope Christy's not as vindictive as Steve.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this goes, especially if Ted and Lakin follow their usual pattern of starting to get closer and then getting annoyed with each other and pulling apart again. It'll be interesting to see if Christy might swoop in on that sort of opportunity.
But will Ted, have this wall up? Summertime. Eden asks Sophia not to plead guilty. Cece, of course, as you remember, had collapsed again last episode from his headaches, and so he secretly visits Dr. Morrison and hides that from his family, and then comes back home to talk to Sophia about not pleading guilty. And the doctor phones and is very angry with Cece for having left. Let me just say it all again. And he's very angry with Cece for having left his office before the results came in. He said that could be very dangerous. Anyway, you have an aneurysm of the brain. A small congenital aneurysm of the cerebral vein. Congenital means inherited, right? So
I think so.
This might be that reference that I recall that his dad had died of an aneurysm at around the same age as Cece. So, Cece tells him that his tests must be wrong and hangs up on him. Then he tells Sophia that he loves her more than Gina, and that they can't be together if she goes to jail. And she says she loves him too, and agrees to plead not guilty. So maybe this aneurysm thing has pushed Cece. It's not just Sophia going to jail that would keep them apart, but if he dies of an aneurysm, he's only got, days or weeks. How long did Peter have?
That's right.
So, so he's just decided to go to the end game with Sophia right away.
It'll be interesting to see if this aneurysm alters Cece's behavior at all.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's a common soap opera thing, and definitely within Santa Barbara, it seems to be a common thing. Yeah. So, we'll see. This should be a fun week. We got a few things happening this week, and I think they said the trial was going to start in 48 hours or something, wasn't it? They gave them a very short time with Jack out of town to make some decisions, so that makes me think the trial is going to start soon. So we got the trial, and we got the big Lakin and Ted dinner to look forward to. So,
and I assume that the action will continue in Europe as well.
Oh yeah, we've had a day off from that. Oh, and a cast member will be gone by the end of the week. Any thoughts as to who that could possibly be?
I don't really have any thoughts. Is it a cast member, or is it just sort of a storyline petering out, or?
Oh, it's a character. A character will actually leave the show.
Oh, wow.
And never return. So it's not just someone, a recast or something.
Well, if things progress quickly with Kelly and Nick, Nick could be dead at the end of the week, since they've now pledged their undying love for each other.
I took that as being a sign that they're about to be rescued or captured, because that's really the whole point of this whole storyline, was to get them married, and that's happened now. So now it's time for helicopters to start swooping in.
Yeah.
But it could also end with Nick's death, and the tragic life of Kelly Capwell continues. Sorry, tragic love life of Kelly. So I'll put you down for Nick.
Yeah, put me down for Nick.
Yeah, there's really no other obvious thing where you're thinking, oh, we can spare someone, because everyone's got a storyline. So.
Yeah, or I was, thinking if one of the actors had to step away or something, like a lot of the storylines could continue on in the background even, But if it's a character just leaving suddenly, then it would have to be part of this. The storyline would have to have them actually leave.
I don't remember how it happens, but it'll be interesting to see, because it's actually, when I took a look at IMDb, I thought, oh, that's a surprise. So we will see as we continue week 51, and we'll be back after watching episode 247 of Santa Barbara. See you then.
Bye-bye.
Ted takes very quick showers, and cold ones too, for some reason.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 247 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired July 16th, 1985, Tuesday episode. And I think I may have seen, if not this episode, the very end of it, because it kind of rang a bell. It starts out with Kelly. She says, maybe I was an artist, as she works on a new sign for Nick's photography business with some charred end of a stick and some wood. They're playing Lionel Richie's Suddenly in the background. Nick's love for photography magically returns thanks to Kelly's wonderfulness. And Out in the woods, Chuck and James are in a red van, and they're scanning the skies with binoculars. They are also in contact with a helicopter that's been flying around for weeks, I guess, looking for Kelly and Nick. And they ask him again if he's checked the old mining town, but he says he didn't see any movement there. Kelly and Nick talk about the fact that they'll have to go home at some point, and both are secretly hoping that the river is too high to cross. Nick goes to check it out on his own and is disappointed to find out that it's passable. He returns to tell Kelly, but he suddenly gets the feeling that she still wants to stay, so he tells her the river is still too high. Mm-hmm. Later that night, Kelly sneaks out with a lantern and checks it for herself, and she sees how low the river is and realizes that Nick told her that so that she could stay. So she hears the helicopter flying over and blows out the light. So she too does not want to leave, and she tells Nick that she saw the helicopter, but that she blew out the light. The copter pilot radios back to Chuck and James that he thought he saw a light by the river, but when he turned around, it was gone. So it must have been a trick. Mm-hmm. So far they're close and have been close for a long time. But unless they see Kelly and Nick moving around in the ghost town, I don't think they're going to spot them. And I think, with the helicopter noise, unless Chuck and James drive into the ghost town, mm-hmm. that they could sneak up on Kelly and Nick that way. Now that we see that they have a van, that may be what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, I had sort of assumed that the terrain to get to the town might be too rough for a car or whatever, but obviously they've gotten their van somewhere near in the vicinity. I did wonder too when I was watching this if that helicopter would also be visible to the police, who are apparently in the area also looking for them as well. So mm-hmm. There might be a confluence of people on the ghost town soon.
I wonder if the road has been too washed out for the van to try that, mm-hmm. and maybe that's what they'll say. Oh, the road looks better now, let's try checking out the ghost town on our own, because if they're just sitting there in the woods looking up at the sky, they're probably bored too.
Yeah.
Parker and Faux Jack are on the phone with each other, and Parker tells them that they still haven't found Kelly and Nick, and Jack gets, pretty irate about that and says you've got to find them. And then he thinks that the Patasols were actually Brick and Amy. Mm-hmm. So Brick is still in his room, in Jack's room, trying to open the safe. Does not succeed. Julia returns, and they tell him that Brick knocked Ivan off the train. So the little battle that we heard yesterday resulted mm-hmm. in Ivan going out the door. Julia comes up with something they can tell Jack, so she breaks a bottle and messes some things up. And then she tells Faux Jack that Ivan came onto her. And Brick and Amy hide in the trunks as Faux Jack reviews the scene in the room and sees the broken bottle that she says she smashed over Ivan's head. And after several searches of the whole train failed to find Ivan, Brick, or Amy, Julia points out one of the exterior doors is off its hinges, and Faux Jack concludes that all three of them have fallen off the train, which is good for Brick and Amy, for him to think that. Mm-hmm. Later, Faux Jack knocks on Julia's door just as the three of them are all eating dinner, so they rapidly hide back in their trunks and throw all the food in the trunks with them, and Julia opens the door, drinking a glass of wine and telling Jack, she was about to turn in, but then Faux Jack finds a second glass of wine. So maybe he's not that convinced that Brick and Amy fell off the train now.
It was the thing that I found so interesting about this whole little part of the story is we actually see Brick and Amy getting into their their little trunks.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually quite a interesting bit of contortion they seem to do to get in them, because they aren't very big trunks.
Yeah, I mean, it's lucky they're limber. I remember trying to get into those space modules at Disney World last year that were clearly designed for children. Santa Barbara teen scene, summertime fun time. Santa Barbara teen scene, summertime fun time. Steve calls Christy to find out where she was last night. She says she was with Ted, but Steve says, no, Ted's with Lakin. And he says that he has found a place for her and that he'll pick her up in an hour to take her to a new apartment. So she kind of obeys him. She packs up her stuff and leaves a note for the Capwells. And then she sees that Ted's jacket is once again draped over the chair near the wicker table, and she takes Lakin's bracelet and decides that Ted owes it to her for what he's put her through. Ted comes in and is surprised that she's leaving. Ted says he knows he hurt her feelings, and Christy gets angry, saying she has no feelings, she just wanted to have fun for half an hour. And then they argue some more, and she tells him that he never learned how to be a friend. At that point, Ted discovers that the bracelet is not in the box in his jacket. And Steve arrives just then, and as the door's still open, he just kind of spies on them through the open door. He watches them argue as Ted asks Christy where the necklace is, and she claims she doesn't have it. He brings up, what Augusta Lockridge had told him. Ted says he bought it for Lakin, and she says that he doesn't really love Lakin and that she could be anyone he wants her to be. So she's back and forth over whether she loves him or not, which is so obvious to everyone, She runs out saying, why do I always have to leave? At the beach bar, we see Jade for the first time in a long time. She's working there with someone named Bobby, and she's chatting with Christy, and she says, oh, I can't believe you're leaving town. Jade even offers her to sleep at their place. So Jade needs to drive Bobby home. It's because I guess they've closed up, and she'd promised to drive him home, but she says she's going to be right back and asks Christy to wait for her and gives her a quarter for the jukebox. And she plays what sounded to me like Madonna's Like a Virgin. And while she's there, Ted arrives. And he asks her for the bracelet. And Christy says, oh, Lakin's been sleeping with Mark this whole time. So she's trying to somehow convince him that Lakin is no good for him. And Christy says she's keeping the bracelet. She goes, it's like, people like me keep notches of the people we don't sleep with. So Ted says he'll call the police, and he grabs her to search her pockets for the bracelet, and she bites him in the arm. Christy says that she'll give him the bracelet if he says that he loves her. Jade comes back around that time and doesn't barge right in, but kind of sees there's an altercation going on. She stays at the door, and they don't actually see her. And she hears Ted say, I can't say that. It's crazy of you to even ask that. You said you'd give it to me and I want it. And Christy says, forget it. And then Ted says, I'll just have to take it. And then Jade leaves, which is interesting, because you'd think if your friends were fighting, you would, do something about it. So it's interesting to me that Jade just left at that point. And as she's leaving from the right-hand side of the screen, Steve Bassett approaches from the left-hand side. He comes towards the beach bar down that other side. And he also decides not to be seen and just watch to see what's going on. So Ted says, okay, I won't call the police, but I'll call your brother Steve. And Christy says, he's just like you, guys like you who get off on inflicting pain. I want to make you remember how bad you've made me feel. And before Ted knows what's going on, she lunges at him and badly scratches his face.
Santa Barbara teen scene, summertime.
And I think he had some, like 3 huge scratches on his face. Now, it's interesting. The reason I said I remembered this because when she bit him, I suddenly remembered that Christy scratches Ted at some point. So that's I must have seen maybe the very end of the episode because that kind of came to mind.
Yeah, it occurred to me watching this, and obviously I don't know if that'll be the case in this particular scenario, but it did seem to me that this kind of scene could be played and used in a lot of ways. So, for example, if someone like Jade just heard a little snippet of that conversation, it could be turned into Ted attacking Christy somehow, and if she was very vindictive, she could say that he had attacked her, and the it was him wanting sex, not wanting a necklace. So it does seem to be, if not in this case, maybe shades of what they might do later in the series, where, you know, someone is thwarted in love and perhaps uses an opportunity to actually accuse them of something perhaps they didn't do. That was one thing I thought could happen with this.
Well, it's interesting. Steve hasn't stepped in yet, but he did. I think he was, he's probably going to wait till Ted's alone and beat him up or something. That's probably what he's thinking.
I mean, that was the only kind of explanation I could think of for Jade leaving, is that she was meant to just hear a little snippet of the conversation, and that maybe Christy would spin it as being something different than what it was.
We will see. And the credits. We had an episode that had credits on it for the first time since... When was the last time we had credits? Episode 227, and this is 247. So a whole month ago. So new in the credits is Steve Bassett, played by Ashby Adams, and Mary Duvall, played by Harley Kozak, and Theda Bassett. I think she was after the main credits, but it's Grace Zabriskie, so she'd show up in that same spot anyway, alphabetically, but I think there was a gap after Robin Wright, so I think it's just a guest role credit. And then we had Chuck, David Crowley, that's the bald guy, James, the guy with the beard, Logan Clark, and copter pilot Bruce Chandler. So we've only heard him, his voice, but perhaps he actually appears in the next episode. And missing from the credits, who was still unexpectedly there last time, was Marcello, which makes sense. But shockingly, still in the credits is Jackie Parks, Martina Danon. So I've been thinking about this since yesterday now. I'm wondering if they had originally planned for Ted's summertime story to be with Jackie. And that maybe when they started mulling things over and thought about introducing the Duval/Bassett family, maybe they decided to take it another way, but they'd already, put her on contract for 3 months or something. And that's why she's still in the credits, because they had expected that to be the summertime story. That's the only thing I could think of. So, unless IMDb's wrong, we won't be seeing her again, so it'd be nice if we got some more episodes with the credits on them, so we could keep track of these things. And tomorrow is our anniversary, so hopefully Ted and Laken will have their romantic dinner after Ted puts some iodine on his cheek.
Put a little bit of makeup on his cheek, and I guess he'll have to explain that scratch to Laken. And that makes me wonder again if that whole scenario could be misconstrued a little bit, if Laken will be a little bit suspicious of why Christy might have attacked him, and the whole story with the
Especially
bracelet.
If Jade visits Laken first.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's where Jade went. She went to run to get Laken or something. Or someone who could help.
And as long as Christy has the bracelet in her possession, she can also say that Ted gave it to her.
Be interesting if Steve would lie and back up Christy's story in order to put the screws to Ted, as he's had a couple of negative run-ins with Ted.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
And then he could have that to hold over Christy and make them live together by saying, well, no, I've lied for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, we will see, but we're 2 weeks from the August sweep, so hold on to your hat, Gussie. We'll be back after we watched episode 248. We'll see you then.
Bye.
What kind of music do you like?
Gregorian chants.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We've finished episode 248 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Wednesday, July 17th, 1985. It's interesting we mentioned Dina Dietrich the other day because the next day she passed away, November 22nd, 2020. She, of course, played Katie Wallace, the mother of Barnaby Wallace. On the episode, Augusta waits for Lionel to try to seduce him. She surprises him by bringing him pizza and a beer in a, I guess, pizza hostess costume that she's either sewn herself or gotten from somewhere.
It's sort of a 1960s style kind of go-go outfit.
The big checkered hat,
Yeah.
black and white.
Yeah.
Lionel decides to slip in the fact that he plans to testify at Sophia's trial that she hated him in order to, give her story some weight. And then they go on to discussing the main part of the evening, having a romantic evening. They're interrupted by a big bag of mail arriving, which Lionel tells Augusta is all the people that, he talked to on the broadcast when he mentioned his problem. So Augusta and Lionel try to have a lovely evening, and Lionel says, well, why can't you say that you love me? And she says, well, if I didn't love you so much, it wouldn't be so hard after what's happened. Anyway, she does tell him that she loves him, and lo and behold, Lionel is a complete man again, to quote him. He decides to burn the fan mail, but Augusta stops him and says that he owes a response to all those people who took the time to write him all their cures and suggestions. So he rushes off to the broadcast, and he thanks everyone, tells them that he managed to solve his problem with his own home remedy, which I think will just cause more questions than he's trying to shut things down with that, but people are going to write him and say, what do you mean, home remedies? And then he reads a poem to Augusta over the air, which she says she likes when he gets home. Over in Leaderbrook, I guess, 1 hour outside of Leaderbrook, Julia tells Faux Jack the reason she has 2 glasses of wine is that she's actually tasting different wines. So he takes a sip of each and says, they taste the same to me. And Julia says, oh, your palate used to be much more refined. This is clearly a such and such, and this is a more earthy such and such. So anyway, he takes a sip of the second one and goes, oh yeah, you're right. So she's bluffed him on that one. And he gets the call that they're an hour out of Leaderbrook, and he says, well, I really don't have time to seduce you, as I said, because I've got some things I need to do. Oh, and by the way, you can't take all this luggage with you on the yacht. I've been telling people to, cut down on there. So they realize that Brick and Amy are going to need another way. Cut to the yacht. Faux Jack and Julia are standing at the railing as all the people board. And we cut to the kitchen, and there are Brick and Amy in chef's outfits. And someone comes in with an order from Jack Stanfield Lee that he wants dinner for 15 people in an hour. So they say, oh, where's Chef Morel? And they say, oh, we've replaced him. We're just as good as him. So then when the guy leaves, Amy says to Brick, I don't know how to cook.
Now, was it 15 or 50?
Oh, it sounded like 15 to me, which matches up with the number of people we saw in the bar car. And also, if you're splitting 200 million between 15 people. That makes more sense than 50 people, because that's that only gives you 20 million or something, doesn't it? Or 10 million? No, 40 million? Anyway.
I have to say I found that very stressful. That's like one of those dreams you have where you think you've missed an exam or something, and the idea of suddenly being a chef and having to produce a gourmet meal for all of these people if you're not a cook.
Amy was peeling potatoes in a later scene, and
Yeah.
I think Brick was either peeling something smaller or also potatoes, but I suspect that Jack might not be too happy with the meal that gets served.
Yeah.
Which is just going to lead him to come and see what's wrong with the chef. So I don't think Brick and Amy are really, in the shadows here in this quite important role that's going to be very, have a spotlight on it in an hour. But,
Well, I had expected them to maybe be, some of the stewards or something like that. I didn't expect it.
yeah, because there were a couple of guys in black and white striped T-shirts that were, moving luggage on board. That they could have maybe blended in with. Maybe we'll see them tomorrow dressed as that as they abandon their chef's outfits. But then Jack's going to go, well, Brick and Amy are on the yacht somewhere. They can't be. It's even smaller than a train, I would imagine.
Now, I don't know how long this ship will take to reach its destination, did they say?
I don't recall. Back in Santa Barbara, Rosa has made a nice dinner, according to Sophia, but Cece says he'd rather go out. And Mason arrives at that time, and Cece says, you get out, and you can take that food in a doggy bag if you want. So Mason decides to just eat it there and then, and Mary shows up, and he takes the opportunity to invite her to dinner and talks her into it. After a while, he hands Mary the note that Christy had written to the Capwell saying, please forward my checks to Jade Perkins. So Mary makes a call to the Perkins house, and we don't see her, but she talks to Marissa, and Marissa says that Jade's at a beach party. So that's where Jade planned to be after the beach bar closed down for the night. After dinner, Mary asks Mason to dance, and while doing so, she says it feels kind of awkward, and then she decides that she's come to the point where she needs to tell him that she's a nun. He decides he still wants to see her again in the future, but she doesn't think that would be too good of an idea. So we will see how that goes. And Mary leaves just as Cece and Sophia come back, and Cece says, what are you still doing here, Mason? And he says that he ate the dinner with Mary, I guess. So. And then he has an attack and sort of loses his footing in front of Sophia and Mason. But he tells them it's nothing. So I think, I suspect both of them know something's probably wrong with him at this point. I can see Mason hiding behind pillars as Cece calls his doctor or something. Because he's got that excuse to visit Brandon, which he's utilizing quite often. So. At the beach bar, after their argument, Christy ends up throwing the bracelet at Ted, and he takes it and runs off. When he gets home, he sees that the scratches are quite deep on his face, and he tries to... Was he trying to cover them up with makeup?
He was, and that wasn't very successful.
So when Mason comes home, he finds Ted fallen asleep in front of the television. Maybe he was watching Lionel's broadcast.
Maybe.
And Mason wakes him up and asks, what happened to your face? He makes some joking suggestions about a girl. But, Ted doesn't want to talk about it. Now, sadly, back at the beach bar, Steve reveals himself to Christy, and she is angry with him for everything. She tells him she only pursued Ted to get away from him, and he says that he loves her, and he manhandles her and tries to get her to tell him that she loves him, and she says, I hate you, and she says these manipulations may have worked when I was 14, but he actually then forces himself on her, and we don't see it, but afterwards he's obviously beaten her as well, because she has a bloody, I think she has a black eye, and there's blood under her face, under her nose. But he's putting his clothes back on, and she's lying on the floor not moving. And he realizes, he says something like, "Oh, maybe you hit your head," or something. So he drags her into the corner and puts her there into the corner and leaves.
Yeah.
Now, did you think Christy might be dead at this point, or did you think she was just unconscious?
I wondered. You know, to me, this was a little bit shades of the Hank Judson thing with Summer all that time ago. Yeah, it was really. I hadn't predicted that she would necessarily give back the bracelet to Ted, and really was surprised that Steve, not only raped her. We knew he had had a relationship with her, but that he was so violent, and then that he left her as well. So
yeah, I'm wondering if he thought she was dead.
Yeah,
and obviously his first thought is, well, Ted Capwell will be blamed for this, so I'm getting out of here.
Yeah, so that makes me really wonder kind of how it's all going to play out together, because obviously Ted, with his scratched up face, is going to look guilty, and we don't know quite what Christy's condition is going to be, if she's going to come around, if she's even going to have a memory when she comes around. So we don't know if, even if she comes to, will she kind of be there to stand up for Ted, or will she not really remember what happened and not be of any help to him?
Because I think all Steve has to say is, or just find some people at the bar that knew Ted was there, and that'll be enough for him to prosecute Ted if Christy's in a coma or something.
Yeah.
So she does regain consciousness at one point. Actually, some people come by to get some beer. Oh, probably for the beach party. But they don't spot her, and they leave again, and she's still unconscious at that point. And then just at the end of the episode, she regains consciousness and says Ted's name once, and then passes out again.
Yeah.
So I think at least the near future is not going to be too good for Ted. We'll see how Christy, Christy's able to come to his defense. But I think Steve Bassett is probably going to push the narrative that this is Ted's fault.
Now that is a bit of a risky narrative if she does wake up, and we know she hates Steve. And so, then she becomes a liability to him, and certainly will be a liability to the story that Ted has had anything to do with this. So it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out.
So it seems to be late in the evening, and Ted's at home. So this must not be the night that Lakin was going to make dinner for him. That must still be tomorrow. So, presumably that will still continue if news of Christy doesn't get out at all. So. And that is it for our anniversary episode. We had several couples and an unfortunate incident. We had Augusta and Lionel. That was a romantic storyline. And I guess Sophia and Cece. We'll be back after we watch episode 249. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
I want a dress rehearsal for the honeymoon, or an undress rehearsal.
You don't want to put the cart before the horse, do you?
Yes, I do.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 249 the other day. Original air date Thursday, July 18th, 1985. At La Mesa, which we haven't seen for a while, Eden overhears Steve tell Cruz that they are both on the same side and he has to testify against Sophia. Cruz says he does not want to do that, and Eden goes over and flips over Steve's plate. Tells him she hopes when he dies he goes straight to hell. So the Capwells are not getting on Steve's good side.
No, and I have to say that I was rather pleased to see Eden's treatment of Steve, especially knowing what he did to Christy.
Mm-hmm. Michelle Phillips of the Mamas and Papas is staying in room 219 at the Capwell Hotel. And guess what? She's been robbed. Cruz is on the case, and Eden follows. And Michelle Phillips flirts with Cruz during the taking of the statement.
Mm-hmm.
And she asks him what he's doing for dinner. So Cruz turns around and asks Eden if he's free for dinner. And he decides to call the Sentinel. Warren is not there. And Sam answers. I don't know if we know who Sam is. Is he the old guy? I can't remember. Anyway, the Sentinel confirms they have received another letter from Robin Hood with a $40,000 donation this time. So I think my theory that Christy was Robin Hood might be wrong in that case, since I think her whereabouts are accounted for.
So I would say my theory that Mary is Robin Hood might still work.
Would have to have been after dinner with Mason.
Mm-hmm.
So Jade opens up the beach bar in the morning, and Mary comes over looking for Christy. They talk a little bit about where she might be, or if Jade saw her, and she says, I saw her briefly last night. Or was it the night before? I can't quite remember. So she must have had a fun time at that party. I don't know if she'll be a reliable person to ask about the goings-on the last time she saw Christy.
I'm sure she'll remember the little snippet of the fight she overheard between Ted and Christy, and that will probably not work very well in Ted's favor.
Mm-hmm. Eventually, Mary does discover Christy, and she realizes she's been raped, because I guess she's worked as a nurse. Steve is called at La Mesa, and he shows up there. Some paramedics show up. Maggie shows up. And then everyone heads off to the hospital. Mm-hmm. Maggie tells Warren what happened off the record, and he promptly calls Cruz and tells him. And Cruz immediately tells Eden. So I don't know if that's privacy concern. All those people spreading information like that.
I suspect we probably haven't seen a lot of really good police best practices in our year on Santa Barbara.
Mm-hmm. That's probably true. Mary is in Christy's room. Theta also has been called. She shows up. Now she must have come a long way from out of town. Unless she was in town already for some reason, because that was quite a drive for Christy and Ted that one time they went there.
Where was it that Christy?
I can't remember the name of the place, but it was like 400 miles away.
Mm.
So maybe she flew in. Christy repeats Ted's name a few times, and when Cruz comes in to question her, she asks, who did this to you? And unfortunately, Mary says, did Ted do this to you? And then Theta says, did Ted Capwell do this to you? Which Cruz is very annoyed at them, leading her statement like that. She looks around the room and notices Steve standing there staring at her, and she decides to say that, yes, Ted did this to me. So she has opted to cover for Steve in this case.
Well, I suspect part of it is because we've seen what Steve has already done to her. I suspect she's quite afraid of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess this does allow her a little bit of revenge on Ted. I don't know if her mind's together enough at this point to really be scheming in that way. But
just regained consciousness.
Yeah, I imagine she does have a certain reflexive fear of Steve, though.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she is right to. because Steve thought he was well and clear when she was possibly dead or in a coma, and the fact that she's...
he seemed to be surprised to
Yeah.
hear that she was unconscious, so I
Yeah.
think he thought she was dead.
Yeah, and not showing a lot of remorse over it, considering how completely obsessive he's been about her. So she's probably quite right to fear him, but unfortunately this totally throws Ted under the bus.
When he got the call La Mesa, he'd just been hanging out there, having coffee, chatting with Cruz. Kelly and Nick decide that they should leave the ghost town, and they don't trust that helicopter. They're pretty sure it's Jack's men, so they decide the best option is for them to head back to the farmhouse. And I remember when I asked you who's leaving the show this week, you thought it might be Nick. And Kelly says, I don't want you to do anything crazy like sacrificing yourself for me. So that's a bit of a scary statement to hear. James and Chuck decide that Nick might head to the farmhouse. So they actually are on the right track. Nick and Kelly get to the barn, and Nick finds that the phone in the barn is not working. So he's going to make a run for it across the yard to get to the farmhouse to try to call Cruz from there. So Nick makes a run for it, and Kelly sees that he's made it safely without anyone shooting at him or any helicopter spotting him. So she just has fun in the barn talking to the chickens, telling them how she's going to marry Nick. And then we see Chuck and James peering through the window at Kelly. So I think things are going to come to a conclusion tomorrow in the storyline.
I am expecting that Nick will not survive the week, and that just after he probably sacrifices himself for Kelly is when the police will show up or something like that. So it's kind of interesting to think about what is in it for the henchmen, and they've now pursued Kelly and Nick sort of all through this rough terrain, and they've been at it for weeks. And I assume perhaps what it is having this lucrative contract with Jack or faux Jack Stanfield Lee, coming from New Stalin. And I guess if they fulfill this contract, they'll be in good stead for more lucrative work from him, perhaps. I always wonder what's in it for the henchmen after a certain length of time.
Yeah, Dr. Renfro's gone. No one's mentioned finding his body yet, but someone phoned Marissa at home and she didn't say, oh, by the way, do you know about this body here? Something must have been dealt with. Laken arrives at Sally's apartment to spend the day with Ted. And he tells her that Christy scratched him when she sees how scratched up his face is, and she gives him some first aid. She talks about getting shrimp for tonight's dinner. She's going to make her famous shrimp Diablo. But they've got all day, and they talk about going to the beach for a while, but Ted says he'd rather stay in with her all day. And he tells her how he first fell in love with her at her 8th birthday party, which I guess was it circus themed? And he showed up dressed as a lion, and she showed up dressed as a bareback rider.
I was trying to imagine what a bareback rider looked like.
Probably a lot like a ballerina.
I would think. Probably in a little sequiny outfit or something.
Special shoes so you don't slip off the horse. And then I fell in love with you again 10 years later. So at one point she goes into the bedroom and comes back out just wearing his shirt. And she says, I hope you don't mind. It's yours, isn't it? And he says, yeah. And she says, so am I. Ted says, I want this day to be perfect. And Laken says, it will be.
Now, I have my doubts that it will be, given what's hanging over Ted after Christie's confession. For me, the two big questions coming out of this sort of renewed relationship between Ted and Laken is, first of all, if they will actually get to consummate their love before Ted is hauled away to jail. And the second question I have is, just whether Laken will stand by him as he faces these charges, and you know, through whatever, I guess, I don't know if it'll go to trial, or you know, I have no sense of how that storyline will unfold yet, but it'll just be interesting to see if she stands by him on that.
I think I agree. Those are the two questions we have, and you know, it would put another kink in their relationship if she didn't stand by him, and then he would be, you know, when he's exonerated, hopefully, he would still be angry with her at that point. So that could be just another delaying tactic for the writers.
I think that would be very much a replay of the entire original Joe and Kelly relationship, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's true, but hopefully only for a month or so. And then once school starts in September, there presumably will have some USB-related storylines.
Yeah,
we're assuming this is a summer storyline for Ted, because, you know, has that feeling.
Yes, and it's looking more and more like, when this storyline plays out, that they will both be going to the University of California at Santa Barbara.
I think that it's just University of Santa Barbara. I think it's like they've made up their own fake university. Although I should check that. Maybe there is a University of Santa Barbara. Maybe there's a Lyman Prep. And that is it for a Thursday episode. So we've got a few exciting things that will be happening Friday. And we'll see someone being arrested probably, and we'll see someone running for their life. And we'll see if Michelle Phillips goes on that date with Cruz. So we'll see you after we've watched episode 250 of Santa Barbara. See you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 250 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Friday, July 19th, 1985. Cruz sends Maggie to pick up Ted for questioning. Maggie tells Ted what happened to Christy and asks him to come down to the station to answer some questions. He goes back to the bedroom where Lakin is waiting for him in bed, and they're taking too long, so Hanson bursts in and arrests Ted right in front of Lakin. Photographers at the police station take Ted's photo as he's being booked. He phones Cece to tell him he's been arrested for rape, and Cece asks, "Who did you rape?" Eden stares at him as if he was insane. Ted hangs up and tells Maggie he doesn't want to see his father. Ted is examined by a police doctor, and then Steve spends a lot of time taunting Ted and tells him he wishes they could hang him. Mason arrives, and Cece asks him to find out about bail. And Mason says, "Prosecution and her half-brother, that's a bad combination for us, Dad." Steve accuses Cece of scheming to pay off Christy. He makes a lot of comments about rich people, trying to subvert the law and such in this episode. So he's playing the insane brother, I guess.
Yeah, he must have a lot of confidence in his ability to control Christy throughout this entire process. Because really, she could, even if he coerces her into pressing charges against Ted, this could really badly blow up in his face if she has a change of heart on the stand or something like that.
It would certainly ruin his career, I would think.
Yeah, at the very least.
Maggie tells Cece that Ted doesn't want to see him. Nick phones Cruz, finally, and says that they're at the Vietnamese farmhouse, and Cruz says, "I know it well. They didn't give up your location." Cruz starts asking questions, and Nick says, "I'll tell you everything when you get here," which I think is a rookie mistake of people who are in a drama.
Anyone who has ever seen a police or crime show from the 70s knows that as soon as the person in the phone booth hangs up to go and tell the person when they see them that they will probably end up dead.
Cruz has got a lot of things that he's juggling in Santa Barbara, but he decides that he should go up and get Nick and Kelly. And that, the police station can handle Ted and the family. And he says basically Mason's the best person to help Ted right now. So Eden decides she wants to go along with him. And as they're riding along, I thought they were going to take a helicopter, but they're in a car at this point. She says she felt like Cruz was a part of her, and when he started arresting half her family, she felt like a part of her was totally against her. Up at Lone Pine, Chuck and James find Kelly in the barn and tell her they work for her father and that Nick kidnapped her. She doesn't believe them and makes a run for it, running flat out into the door and knocking herself out. So I'm wondering if her memory will be back when she awakens. Chuck phones Faux Jack from the driver's seat of the red van, where they've got Kelly in the back. James decides to go for a walk because they actually are arguing a bit over what to do. And then Nick knocks out Chuck and starts to untie Kelly, but James comes back from his walk and puts a gun in Nick's back. Nick elbows him, and James knocks him to the ground. James jumps into the car, into the red van, and then Chuck pulls away, but turns around, and the last thing we see is Nick in the headlights of the red van. Mary warns Theda, when they go in to see Christy, not to blame Christy. Theda promptly says, "What did I tell you about going out with boys like that?" You can see Mary's face as Theda continues, and Mary has to stop her eventually. And then Theda asks Christy if she'll forgive her if she stops drinking, because Theda kind of blames herself for this. Christy says she already has. Steve lets a photographer in to take Christy's picture, says, "Oh, this'll play well for us." And then tells Christy that she'll also have to press charges against Ted and testify against him on the stand. So Christy kind of has a very, very troubled look on her face. She really doesn't want this whole thing to drag out, I don't think.
You know, with all of the hassle she's getting in her hospital bed, I mean, she almost has the look of someone who wishes she was back in her coma and not having to deal with all of this family drama and everything that's going to come out of this. She's
got to cover for Steve and all her conversations with Mary and Theda, and she's got to talk in circles around things. So I don't think
she's, you know, I mean, she is very upset with Ted and the fact that he wasn't able to reciprocate her feelings. But, you know, she does care about Ted, probably likes him better than most of her family at this point. So it's a tough situation.
Yeah, we'll see what happens if Christy and Ted have a scene together at some point. And that is it for week 51. And someone has left the cast. We'll find out on Monday what happens to Nick. And that will be week 52, the last week of the year. We'll have 1 week and 1 day left before year 2 begins. So we'll see you then. We'll be posting this in 2 weeks. Week 52. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Santa Barbara characters we lost in year 1. February 8th, 1884. Horatio Lockridge. Nathaniel Capwell. May the 20th, 1939. Herr Riker and Frau Riker.
You're making my parents die! You should be in the airplane!
Amanda Lockridge. T. MacDonald Lockridge. 1969, Sophia Wayne Capwell.
Tell me, Sophia. Tell me you hate me.
All right, Lionel! I hate you! I hate you! Don't you let me alone! You let me
I must have hit my head in the fall. Who are you? Why are you doing this to me? Get your hand up.
Not so fast.
Oh, my God. Sophia.
Emmett Capwell, Mrs. Emmett Capwell. July 30th, 1979, Channing Capwell, Jr.
Channing. Call an ambulance. Phone's on the desk.
Is he alive?
I don't know.
1984, The Prince of New Zealand. October 5th, 1984, Joe Perkins. Eaten by a shark.
Is it Joe's?
Yeah.
Joe Perkins was a friend to a lot of people. Probably to a lot more people than he knew. He was certainly the best friend I ever had.
Kelly?
Not so fast.
Kelly?
Joe's alive.
Mom, Joe doesn't need a memorial service. What are you saying? Mom, he's alive. Who told you this? He didn't drown. He was saved. He's hiding out not very far from here.
November 12th, 1984, Ted Capwell.
Ted! Capwell, can you hear me?
Oh, God, he's dead.
Not so fast. Ted's alive.
Oh, thank God. Come on, man. Come on, we've got to get out of here. You're going to be okay. We've got to get out of here before this thing caves in.
November 12th, earthquake victims.
A major earthquake has struck Santa Barbara, California, only minutes ago. The president was not in residence at the time. At least 11 people are reported killed. The injury count has risen above 500, and many, many people are reported missing.
November 12th, 1984, John Perkins.
Your mother always thinks the world is going to come to an end if she isn't there to tell her what to do.
John, do we have the camera?
Yes, honey, I have it right in the bag.
Filmed. We have film.
Marissa, I have the film.
Well, John, where's the taxi? Why isn't... Oh, what now?
Hello?
Dad, it's me.
Hello, Joe. You caught us just in time. We're practically out the door.
January 7th, 1985, Barbara Anderson.
My name is Barbara Anderson.
Hi, Barbara. Peter.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Listen, why don't I come back sometime when you're not so busy?
Sure, sounds great.
Yeah, I know you're trying to close up and you're probably anxious to get home.
Yeah, well, you have a good night now.
You too, Barbara.
January 9th, 1985, Lionel Lockridge.
If Lionel is alive, he is not going to waste any time in telling other people that I'm alive.
There's nothing that we can do about that now. Anyway, he's probably dead.
Yes, but we don't know that for sure.
All I know is that his chance of surviving is almost nil.
He was just laying down there on the side of the railroad tracks, and I figured he wouldn't mind if I just took advantage of his wallet since he was dead and all.
Not so fast.
Yeah. Dad. Oh, thank God you're okay.
Lionel's alive.
Sure. I'll let everybody know. All he said was he wanted me to let you and Lathan and Grandma know that he's okay.
January 11th, 1985, Summer Blake.
Listen, I have to be going. I'm supposed to be meeting Mason.
All right, well, I'll drive you over there.
Oh, you don't have to do that.
Oh, yes, I do. There's a killer in town right now. And I can't let you run around by yourself.
January 29th, 1985, Veronica Gailey.
Just a minute.
Hi, Veronica. Hope I'm not interrupting anything.
February 7th, 1985, Candy Fox.
You know, you look just like a girl I once knew.
Well, handsome, I can be any girl you want me to be. What was her name?
Kelly. Name's Kelly.
Well, would you like for me to be Kelly tonight?
You want to come up to my room?
That's a terrific idea.
February 15th, 1985, Peter Flint. Not so fast.
I know I shouldn't have stopped, but, well, he looked half dead and all by himself in the desert. What are you talking about? Well, that carnation killer? I think he's coming for you.
Peter Flint.
Peter's alive?
And on his way to town.
February 21st, Peter Flint.
Well, they found a body washed up on the beach, an apparent suicide. It matches Peter's description. Been a mistake. That's not Peter Flint. Oh, thank God I found you. You don't know how worried I've been. The coroner made a mistake. The body wasn't Peter's. He's still alive, probably armed.
Peter.
Hello, Amy. I'm here for the party. I hope I'm not too early.
February 21st, 1985. Male Caucasian in his mid-20s.
Look at this guy.
He's green.
He's dead. Come on, we gotta go get the cops right away.
February 28th, Antonio Fiorno, Peter Flint.
Hey, Peter, hi.
Hi, Lincoln.
How are you?
Hi, Kelly. Had my ups and downs, but I'm a survivor. I was just thinking about you the other day.
You're thinking about me?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, the last year I taught you at Lyman, it was a really good year for me. I remember I had a lot of bright students in my class. You were one of the brightest. Not to mention one of the prettiest. No contest there at all.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I feel so funny. I feel like I should be calling you Mr. Flint or something.
I think we're way beyond that. You know, you've really grown up into a beautiful woman.
Well, thank you.
I'm glad I was able to contribute to your development in some small way.
March 1st, 1985. Joe Perkins. April 23rd, 1985. Jeff Barber.
Sweet Amy. You know how much I genuinely like and admire you. We said from the very start there'd be no strings. We'd have fun for as long as it lasted. Beauty, I'm going to Hawaii with someone else.
April 30th, 1985. Hank Judson.
You and me, we were made for each other. All this pretending to be a Capwell. How long do you think that's going to last? Then you're going to come looking for old Hank. Yeah, real bad, you're going to want him. Come on, baby, don't fight it. Don't fight it. I know you want me. I know you do. Hey, what's that?
It's a gun. And if you come any closer, I'm going to use it on you.
Okay, hey. I ain't crazy. Whatever you want.
May 6th, 1985. Larry Parks.
Oh, my God.
May 14th, 1985. Brandy.
She's dead.
The baby died. And we did everything possibly that could be done.
Not so fast.
In fact, it seemed to me that your baby was perfectly sound.
I don't understand. What?
I am saying that I don't think your baby is necessarily dead.
Hello, my precious. You are so beautiful. You are so beautiful and so beautiful. Hello. Oh, I love you.
June 18th, 1985. Kelly Perkins.
At precisely 10 o'clock, though, Kelly will no longer be all right.
Too bad he never knew the girl's still alive. She's alive.
June 27th, 1985. Dr. Renfro.
Dr. Renfro?
In Memoriam, Year 1, Santa Barbara.
You think I'm a vampire?
Santa Barbara summertime, sometime, something? I'll drop in our theme song. Summertime, fun time.